GemRate has released its January data for the big four grading companies. We are going to take a gander, take a look, and talk about it. Stick around. Friends, foes, frenemies, welcome back. How are we doing?
I feel pretty good too. I think I finally got some sleep.
Hope everybody is doing amazingly well. It is another day. It is another card video. I'm excited. Tomorrow night, I'm going to be recording with Ken from Sports Card Lessons Podcast, and that episode will come out sometime in the future. Excited to join him on his show. What's that? Yeah, I know. I didn't forget. Big thanks to today's video sponsor, ComC.com, your home for buying, selling, and flipping all the hottest trading cards. Their consignment marketplace now home to over 30 million cards from baseball superstars like Aaron Judge to Marvel favorites like Spider-Man. ComC has something for every type of collector. Make sure to visit ComC.com today to build out your collection with your favorite cards. You always hear it, guys, the Disneyland for card collectors and flippers, investors, whatever you call yourself. It's a great time. Check out ComC.com. All right, we have got grading data from GemRate.com. Make sure to check these guys out. The GemRate.com website gives you all sorts of great variety of different ways to run grading data. It's based on population reports. That's how they're able to figure out what's being graded and so forth. And it's really just kind of cool to be able to go in and dissect what companies are grading and the trends with that, the different sets, different players that are popular. So very, very cool. Check out GemRate.com. PSA, unsurprisingly, is still over 1 million cards, 1.007 million cards. That is down 5% from the last month, but it just makes me think again. I think I talked about this the last month. I think that that's really their capacity or where they want to be. Nat Turner's talked about it. 50,000 cards a day is really the target, 20 business days approximately in a month. It equals out to about 1 million cards. Because you have to think too, these grading companies, while speed, of course, is very important, the quality part is also just as important, because if there's a sense that, oh, they're just churning out cards and not really paying attention, then it starts to impact the brand and really the consistency of the grading. PSA has gotten some pushback on this where, part of it is just that it's either a 9 or a 10. There is no 9.5, and a lot of people like that. A lot of people like that it's just 9 or 10, but the problem with there only being a 9 or a 10 is it's got to fall one or the other, and there's some 10s that look like 9s or some 9s that look like 10s. When you get into vintage, it can be all over the place depending on, the person that is looking at that card. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so for consistent grades, I know PSA has got to try to figure out ways to kind of balance that out. Of course, they're getting a lot of business. They want to be able to get it back to consumers, get it back to collectors. At the same time, though, you don't want consumers to think that it's just a mill where the cards come in and just like stamp grades on them and then they go back out. That's what they are probably trying to avoid. So I'm going to anticipate that 1 million cards is about where they're going to tap out, unless there's just some huge surge in demand where they're getting sent 2 or 3 million cards every single month. Then they have to up their capacity. But I would assume, and again, I don't run these businesses. I have no idea. I don't have any inside information, but I would assume that's exactly where they want to be, is right in that 1 million cards a month place. All right, CSG/CGC, 132,000 cards strong for the month of January. That's a plus 19%. It's plus 1% on the sports card side at 34,000 sports cards, and then they had 97,000 non-sports/TCG cards. And CGC is popular with Marvel card collectors and then also with some of the Pokemon collectors as well. And it seems like that's really their strength there, is the CGC side. It's the TCG, kind of the Marvel stuff. That really seems to be what's moving the needle right now for that company. Whether it is Pokemon or Marvel or maybe it's Star Wars or whatever it is, they've got their niche. All these companies seem to. That's what's interesting. I'm going to touch on that in a little bit. SGC sits at 81,000 cards strong. They're plus 4%. They are a channel partner here, so I'm an SGC homer, so I like to see the fact that they are up 4%. They did announce some different kind of promotions and $15 Pokemon grading to really try to broaden out kind of the TCG side. And honestly, look, that is the most obvious place of growth for grading companies. It's massive. It now makes up something like 40% of PSA's business is what it looks like based on these numbers. And it was not always that way. I remember looking at charts going back and it was more like 20, 25%. And now we're talking 40, 45%. That's massive. That's huge. And so for these companies, that is an opportunity for SGC most certainly. They did 4% more cards in January, and we'll see what it looks next month because really that Pokemon special came out right in the middle of January. So we're not seeing the full effect of that. I'm curious to see. There is growth on that side for them for January, but I really want to see what it's like for February and see if that's kind of steadily moving forward for SGC. Beckett up 20%, 57,000 cards, and GemRate also notates that it's tough sometimes to gauge the BGS numbers because their population report, there's a lag in the reporting and or maybe an issue pulling that data. And so for Beckett's numbers, I guess you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt, but 57,000 cards, and it looks like that is an improvement from the previous month. And look, Beckett has got the name recognition. I really like the Beckett slab itself. You know, the label I'm so on, but it's a sturdy slab. I think they have solid graders. So, I mean, it's just kind of pick whichever one you like, and it probably depends on what kind of card you are grading too. And really, I've talked about this really for a long time. I think that there is more and more brand loyalty that is forming with these four companies. Most impressively with CSGC GC, simply just because they're a new entrant into the space. They're 18 months to 2 years old. A lot of grading companies that are 18 months, 2 years old really would have a hard time putting a dent in this space, and they've come right in. Now, granted, they've got CGC on the comic book side. They have name recognition. People know who they are in the collectible space. They're a big company that's a long time company, so they're not a newcomer. SGC also has a solid fan base, always had it for vintage, and now they've really kind of blown up in the modern, ultra modern space, which 2.5, 3 years ago, they really weren't much of a factor. It was more of BGS and PSA for ultra modern stuff. Now SGC has really put a heavy dent into that. It's cool to see these companies kind of battle. You know, they're battling for positioning and they're all doing stuff. I think they all have pricing specials. They all have different things that they're doing, different initiatives, different marketing efforts to try to broaden out their space. And I think there's enough to go around. There's a big enough pie to where really these four companies can do very well. PSA, one thing that's kind of interesting too is I was watching a few different YouTubers. I think one of them's in the UK, another one may be in Australia, and they were actually talking about PSA submissions and, let's see what your PSA submission looks like. And I know that PSA is a global company. I knew that, but I would really be curious to know. I know that the vast majority of people grading cards are in North America, the vast majority, but I wonder what that breakdown looks like globally and how that's changed over time with PSA broadening out kind of what they're doing in Asia and different places. Because you look at how they're able to maintain 1 million cards a month and get that inflow. How much of it is coming from international folks? And again, this is something I'm just kind of throwing it out in the universe. I don't know if there's a way for Ryan at GemRate to even know that. I don't think there's a way to track it because he's just using population reports. He's not able to see where submissions are coming from, but that would be cool data. If anyone from PSA is watching this, collectors is watching this, it would be really cool to kind of have an idea of how much of the international market is part of these figures or not. And so anyway, to wrap, it's amazing to me how strong these grading numbers are. I mean, you look at the global economy and people are still flooding card shows. They're still going into hobby shops. They're staying busy. Granted, not all of them. There's going to be some that are good, some that are not. And then you've also got grading that really hasn't slowed. If we're looking at these numbers, I mean, what about these numbers tells you that the hobby is slowing down as far as people wanting to grade cards? And grading is certainly less expensive, but it's not $8 a card. You know, it's not $5 a card. It's still, $12, $15, $20 or more, depending on the card. So it's not as if people aren't putting hard-earned money into grading. It's just a very interesting, especially card prices have come down quite a bit. So kind of more of a buyer's market. You still have a lot of people grading cards, which I just want to see how this goes. This is very interesting because all these cards get graded. Some of them move into collections. There's a certain percentage that move into, okay, this is a PC card moving into PC. And then there's a percentage that's going out into the market for sale. So I kind of wonder too, I mean, some of that price sag that we've seen over the last year, 18 months, is it people souring on sports cards or non-sports cards, culture cards, or is more of it or / most of it to do with just the immense amount of slabs hitting the market? There's definitely been more cards graded over the last 3.5, 4 years than there probably has in the history of card grading going back to 1990. I mean, the numbers are staggering. And so is it just a supply thing? Because interest is there. It's just that you have more supply out there. Granted, I know there's one of ones and there's golds out of 10 and these sort of things, but we're just talking about regular cards. Very interesting stuff. But guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about the data? Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.